Hey wrestling fans, this is going to be my review of Survivor Series 1994. So it is once again the Survivor Series season. This was held in San Antonio, Texas on the 23rd of November 94, once again falling on Thanksgiving Eve, which was the tradition at this time in the WWF for this big pay-per-view. I don't think it is anymore. I don't think they hold it on Thanksgiving Eve. A transition period for the WWF in many ways when it comes to their business and trying to create new stars and stay fresh and ahead of the curve. Also, it's an interesting Survivor Series because it's a mix of the traditional elimination matches alongside a couple of bigger, singles matches, starting to mix things up a little bit. They're obviously feeling and filling the card up with too many elimination matches is a bit overkill. So let's see how that pans out. I've not seen this show for years. I remember having mixed feelings on it back in the day. Monsoon and Vince McMahon, and because they're in Texas, they're playing the whole cowboy gimmick. You can see an image of them now dressed up as cowboys. Don't they look a sight? But yeah, odd and pretty rare to have an all-face announce team in this era. I'll say, as they're hyping up the card, Gorilla sort of does a crappy sort of old-fashioned American stereotype where he's kind of talking about the Wild West and the American heroes, how they were brave and courageous, and he's sort of comparing it to the headline match with Taker and Zuna, so that's a bit crappy. But overall, I have to say, Gorilla Monsoon does a great job this card. He carries a lot of the bulk with him and Vince, and he does a good job of selling the stakes and telling the story of each matchup. Monsoon gets a lot of shit as an announcer from some people, and I don't really get it. He seems really in his element in this show, maybe because he had to work extra hard supporting Vince, but I think he's an underrated announcer. He's so iconic and had a great turn of phrase. I always enjoyed Monsoon as an announcer personally. So we open up with a classic Survivor Series style elimination match, 5-on-5. You've got the bad guys against the Teamsters, and the bad guys are Intercontinental Champion Razor Ramon, the 1-2-3 Kid, the British Bulldogs, and the Head Shrinkers. They take on the team of Shawn Michaels and Diesel, alongside Double J, Jeff Jarrett, Owen Hart, and Jim Neidhart. So a pretty stacked opening matchup, and it was in danger of running away with the show, this one. This continues the slow burn, sort of falling apart of the Diesel-Shawn relationship, because the theme of the match is that Shawn is always overshadowing Diesel, he's up in his ear all the time, shouting instructions, directing traffics, and being very sort of bossy. This is the era, no matter what you think about some of the stuff WWF were putting out on their TV, at least give them credit, because they still know how to tell a good story and to string it out over many months, because they first started planting the seeds for this full break apart, and that there would be heat between Shawn and Diesel back at the Royal Rumble in January, where Shawn eliminated Diesel with a sneaky super kick. UF did a great job of really protecting Diesel and working to his strengths, making him look like a badass, and that's what we see in this match. But there's lots of talent. We get some good wrestling early on, some good exchanges, the likes of Owen Hart and the 1-2-3 Kid with the quick pace, fast pace counter wrestling action, some nice karate kicks like the reverse karate jump kick from the Kid. You've got the spin kick, real kick from Owen, which looks fantastic. Jarrett making an impression as a heel. You've got the Bulldog and Owen, who are of course feuding. They'll be on opposite sides of the ring later on for the WWF title matches. I like there. exchanges as Bulldog overpowers Owen. He gives him like a monkey flip or a slingshot into the corner, then a press slam for a red hot 2 count. And we get some good action. We get some good action with Jarrett and with Razor, who are like about to enter an IC title feud. Jarrett really knows how to work a crowd up. And he does a lot of like mind games, like taking Razor over and then slapping him on the back of the head. Ramon gives the kid like the 4-way slam, but propels him onto Jarrett for a red hot 2. So some exciting action, and we go a long time without any elimination. So you wonder where the first one's going to come from. And out of nowhere, because Monsoon keeps like hyping how neither Shawn Michaels or Diesel have been in the matchup, and finally Diesel tags in and just explodes. He eliminates like about 3 guys in a row. Stupid storyline with Fatu of the Head Shrinkers where he's been like struggling to get his boots on all match. Like, it's been this whole thing. It's so random. I don't know if they're doing some things there where it's going to lead to a fallout, a breakup of the Head Shrinkers, but it's just silly. Occasionally they cut to it. And Diesel charges in, big clothesline, sends Fatu inside out. He then gives him the jackknife for the 3 count. And he eliminates a bunch of guys with the jackknife. The kid gets some like shots on him. So he drop kicks him off the top rope. Goes toe to toe, but eventually he's eliminated by Diesel. So he's basically against the 5 heels. Action between Razor and Diesel, and Diesel Razor hits like the top rope Bulldog, gets a near fall, couple of moves, but it's that sort of fatigue, which is he's obviously been in the match a long time. Diesel is fresh, and Diesel keeps overpowering him. Hits like a jackknife powerbomb. And it's at this point that Shawn Michaels wants in. Of course, he wants to steal the spotlight once again from Diesel. He wants to take all the glory of getting the pin. So Diesel does his job. He tags him in. But no. Michaels isn't just going to pin Razor. That would be too easy. He wants to direct traffic. He really wants to drive home the advantage and really showcase his like talents. So he starts like setting up like a double team with Diesel, and this comes back to bite him on the ass because Diesel holds Razor in position. Shawn sets up the sweet chin music and the super kicks, but he's off target, out the way, and Diesel takes the brunt of the super kick. And this is it. This is the turning point. This is the last straw from Diesel, who has had Michaels in his ear for the past 10-15 minutes. He snaps. He goes crazy. Diesel turns on HBK, goes after him. The rest of the Teamsters tried to help Shawn out. Tried to cut Diesel off through all of them. He chases Shawn, or stalks Shawn, back to the dressing room as Michaels begs off and retreats. And it all turns around. Razor wins by count out. All 5 heels get counted out. A dramatic ending, a nice storyline, beautifully told, a convincing breakup of the relationship, the partnership with Shawn and Diesel. So a good match, a decent opener. The only thing I'll say is that the finish was a bit forced, like with all the heels getting counted out. I thought that was a bit over the top and didn't quite buy into that one, because why would they allow themselves to get count out just because Diesel's going after Shawn? It's like, okay, like I can understand them maybe throwing themselves in the way at first because they obviously don't want things to descend and they want to keep their team together. But once Diesel like runs through them and goes after Shawn, I would think they will be, well, we've still got the odds advantage over Ramon. Let's stay in and let's finish him off. Just made them look a bit stupid. Entertaining opener with some good storytelling, some good crowd heat, and a really dramatic ending to the match with Shawn and Diesel. So I'm going to give that one 3.5 stars. A really strong opener, as I said, and you just see in this how good a heel Shawn Michaels was, how good he was at playing the self-obsessed, like cocky sort of heel. As he leaves the building and Todd Pentagill interview him, Shawn, still with his shirt off, is like running to his car, trying to get the hell out of Texas as quickly as possible. And I just love the whole thing of him running Diesel down, calling him ungrateful, says he's a zero without me, all that stuff. And Todd's like telling Shawn, Diesel's on his way, and of course Shawn wants no part of it. He drives off. So brilliant stuff. They planted the seed so well earlier in the year, and they paid off the storyline. And Diesel, they did a great job of putting Diesel over, even in defeat, and setting up this feud now moving forward. Well, how do you follow a strong opening with this crap? That's how, with a match which only a 5-year-old could enjoy. It's more Survivor Series elimination action. The royal family, led by Jerry the King Lawler, against Clowns R Us. And the best thing about the match may be the Clowns R Us team name. So the ongoing feud, Doink against Jerry the King Lawler. Yes, we're returning to the midgets, folks. Like, this is the 1980s all over again, except there's no King Kong Bundy in the match to flatter them. That's a WrestleMania 3 reference. So you've got the King with his dwarfs, like Queasy, Sleazy, Cheesy, something like that. And then you've got Doinks with his different, like, miniature clowns, his regular sidekick, Dink, Pink, a bunch of other like rhyming names. They've all got different hair colour, which is something at least. Yeah, this is absolute garbage. This is just a terrible match and a low point in Lawler's career. Full style wrestling, like silent movie type gags, where everything that could go wrong for the heels basically goes wrong. Lawler is humiliated by his team as they just keep miscuing all the time, screwing up. Rounds of run over the King, eject every now and again, they all run over the King, and then his own team, as they're chasing the other team, they all run over him as well. So all these pratfalls, pins Doink, he reverses a crossbody off the top, rolls him over, and he grabs a handful of tight to eliminate Doink. So that turns things around, and this is where it's really dumb, because Doink's eliminated, but in a way so is the King, because he's not allowed in with like the midget. But this obviously plays into his plans where he can like interfere from ringside, so you get some action with the small people of the match. And the whole thing is that Lawler keeps interfering, and eventually he wins it for his team. So you get stuff like him helping Queasy out on a pin, and they eventually eliminate them, and the King's Court win the match. And after, in classic Lawler form, he berates the midgets. He says, "I don't know why you're celebrating, because I won that match for you. I made like 3 losers into 3 winners." All that, he's like mocking them. He's telling them to get down and kiss their feet. And of course it all leads to all 6 of the midgets turning on Lawler, going after him. Predictable stuff. And eventually we get like some sort of a pie, like a pumpkin pie or something, in his face from Doink, who's waiting at the runway. Really lame. Like only the very young kids could get into this one. 1 star. It definitely made the Doink match, elimination match from last year, look like a bit of a classic. The low light of the show, and to add a bit of insult to injury, in the next segment we get highlights of Alundra Blaze. losing the women's title to Bull Nakano, and it's a big match in Tokyo at the Egg Dome. We see Alundra Blaze make her entrance on a motorcycle, which looks really great entrance, and we see Bull Nakano with the top rope leg drop for the 1, 2, 3. She's the new women's champion, and you just think, okay, I get them doing that in Tokyo to take advantage of the local favourite, but they could have had a rematch at Survivor Series or something. That would have been a useful match to have on the card, or they could have just shown all of that match or extended highlights, something like that, instead of wasting their time with this crap. And then they do sort of a lame sort of comedy bit where Pedigree Girl tries to interview the new champion, but of course she only speaks Japanese, there's no translator, and it's just a bit of a comedy sort of thing where Todd just has these muted reactions because he can't understand her. Pretty lame. Get a translator. But yeah, that sort of shows the priorities, because the Blaze Bull Nakano feud was pretty good stuff, and it certainly was worthy of more pay-per-view time, and would have been much more worthy than the match we just had. Next up, we get what in a way is the proper headline of the show. It's the WWF title match, submission matchup. Defending champion Bret the Hitman Hart against former WWF champion Bob Backlund, 45 years old. Highlight his age and how he would make history. The oldest WWF champion, making a late career comeback, which would be similar to George Foreman. They highlight the similarities, which is really nice. And it's the stipulation, it's a submission match, but also they've both got corner men. The Bulldog is in Bret's corner, Owen is in Bob Backlund's corner, and they both got towels where if they decide their men have had too much, or if their men instruct them, they can throw in the towels and it'll lead to a submission win. It's a weird little stipulation. That the match itself has a decent story behind it, because Bob Backlund turned heel recently when he had a title match against Bret, believing he had got the pinfall. He was then pinned by Bret, and frustrated what he believed was a dodgy count, he just snapped after the match and he put Bret in the crossface chicken wing and just goes crazy, and that's it. The Mr. Bob Backlund character is created and he goes heel, so we get this rematch, this submission match. And the whole thing with the towel is because Backlund, who originally was WWF champion from the 70s to the 80s, so a decade, he previously lost the title to the Sheik in 1984. Manager Arnold Skaaland throwing in the towel, and yeah, Backlund claims that Skaaland threw in the towel prematurely, then he never asked him to do that. So it's this whole thing of, I never really lost the title and now I want it back. Owen in his corner is perfect, and they set the table really nicely. Monsoon hyping up the stakes and how likely are either to throw in the towel. You've got the Hart family at ringside watching on, so it's all beautifully done. And although the gimmick is a bit weird, and the match does drag a little bit in places, overall it's a really solid match with some great crowd heat, some good slow build drama and wrestling, and some good storytelling involved. So we get a slow build, some amateur style wrestling back and forth, which matches a lot of what Backlund came up with. But just a highlight on the two moves, like the sharpshooter and the chicken wing. So Backlund trying to hook on the chicken wing at certain points during the match. He works over Bret's arms, the upper body, that's highlighted by Monsoon, and at various times goes to grab it, but Bret turns into it or counters it with some nice moves. At the same time, the Hitman working on the lower body, trying to weaken the legs of Backlund, and Backlund counters that like a few different times. We get some stiff blows back and forth. Brett gets the figure four leg lockers at one point, and Backlund is on the canvas for a while. Of course, there's no pins, but he's in a lot of pain. And I love Owen at ringside, where Owen is just looking at the towel. He sells it like a pro. He keeps shouting, "No, I said no, I'm not throwing that damn towel." I absolutely love Owen in this match. Is just so good. He just sells everything so well, and his facial expressions, just him glaring at the towel, is so effective. Pile driver from Backlund at one point, which looks a bit rough, but Brett comes back later with a pile driver of his own, and that's when he's really starting to get into his groove. He does like the traditional moves, like the big back breaker, the elbow off the second rope, the side Russian leg sweep, which is on the money, and eventually he sort of hooks in like the sharpshooter, and we get a chase around the ring as Owen tries to interfere, and Bulldog chases him, but eventually Owen runs back inside and he gets a Bulldog on Brett, which breaks the hold, but the chase continues, and the Bulldog runs into the post and knocks himself out, which is a bit random, but that's what they go with. He's out cold for the rest of the match, and this is where the drama really starts, because Owen appears to be like concerned for the Bulldog at ringside, and then Backlund, I love how realistic and convincing this all is, because Backlund from the backside grabs onto Brett, goes for the crossface chicken wing, and Brett just struggles with it for like ages. He keeps blocking it, and even when Backlund gets like half of it, Brett is still fighting it off and trying to like stop him from taking him down, stopping like the body scissors part so he doesn't get it fully on. And as this goes on, you get the drama of Owen at ringside just crying and pleading, and eventually he locks it on, and he's got like the crossface chicken wing on Brett, and they're down on the canvas for something crazy like 5 or 6 minutes. It just looks so good. And Owen just with the waterworks, he's crying and pleading, I never wanted this to happen, please, he's my brother, and just the drama. He's talking about Christmas and all that. And of course Stu and Helen are prime position at ringside as Owen begs them to do something, and they're just so conflicted. They play on that emotion, and I mean, just amazing acting from Owen Hart. What a gem he was. But he slowly suckers them in. Like, he removes the guardrail, they go, and he's trying to put the towel in Helen's hand. Stu takes it out at some point. Like, you can see Stu, the pride of the father. He knows that Brett wouldn't want them to throw the towel in, but they're just so torn and conflicted, and Owen turning on the waterworks is really tearing away. And finally Helen rips the towel out of Stu's hand and throws it in, and that's it. That's the win. And the shock result, the new WWF champion is Bob Backlund. Unbelievable. The announcers sell it so well, and of course it was a ruse all along from Owen. He runs back to the locker room triumphantly, and just the arena is stunned. You get like the desired reaction from the crowd. Many of them, the youngsters, are in shock. They're booing quite loudly, and Backlund just eats it up. History made as Backlund with the surprise result. And once again, Owen's interview post-match when he's just cheering in glee is just delightful, because of course it was all about getting one over on Brett. They've had this tremendous feud throughout the year, and that's what it all comes down to. If he couldn't have the title, he wanted to make sure Brett no longer had it, and his interview is so good. we've seen some great heels tonight. Shawn Michaels earlier, and now Owen might have topped him, because he's just saying things like calling Brett a loser, he suckered his parents in. He's like, this is the best Thanksgiving ever, which I absolutely love. And finally, when they go back to the arena, Gorilla's like, Owen Hart's a first class creep. I absolutely love it. So overall, it's a good match. As I said, the gimmick of the match was a bit strange, and it dragged a bit in places. It was a bit slow at times, but overall, they did what they needed to do. It was great drama, great storytelling, some great wrestling, and they got over what they needed to, and they got the desired response from the crowd. So I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. I won't go higher because of some of the things I said, but a really good match overall. A few days later, WWF decided to go in a different direction, where Backlund, having waited all these years to get the belt back, only had it for a few days. He lost it to Diesel in Madison Square Gardens in like 8 seconds. So a really quick match, jackknife powerbomb, and bam, Diesel. They've turned him face, and they've put the belt on him in a matter of a few days. So weird stuff in many ways. Like they obviously see a lot in Diesel and wanted to shoot him to the moon, give him the big push, and they've done that very well. But to put the belt on Backlund and make such a big deal about it, and such drama, and then to take it off him so quickly, that is a little bit weird for me, considering they did it on a pay-per-view and then he loses it on a house show. That is strange. Mr. Backlund, I should say, for now, the new WWF champion, and a decent interview later on as well, where he says he never lost the title, but he's held it since the 70s, but now he's got the belt back, and that morality back to society is what he basically said, and he just screams that he's a god. Next up, we return to the elimination action as Guts and Glory, led by Stars and Stripes himself, Lex Luger, take on the $1 Million Team. So Guts and Glory, I'm going to say it has to be one of the worst team names ever. You've got Lex Luger, the Smoking Guns, Adam Bomb, and Mabel, with Mo at ringside for them. And then the $1 Million Team is Bam Bam Bigelow, Tatanka, King Kong Bundy, really completing the 1980s feel, with Backlund earlier, of course, and then adding to that, you've got the Heavenly Bodies along with their manager, Jim Cornette. So you've got 2 heel managers at ringside for the $1 Million Team. And this was another one, on paper it didn't look that great. There was some dead weight in this match, especially on Luger's team, but overall it was a decent match. It was very watchable. It wasn't too bad. It didn't drag too much. They booked it quite nicely at times. He comes in and he sort of threatens to clean house against the smaller guys, but then Mabel comes in, and of course he's just as big as Bundy, and you get a standoff between them. Mabel gets the best of Bundy, and Mabel dominates for a few minutes. He takes out Tom Pritchard with a big sort of splash off the second rope, and he threatens to do the same to Del Rey. He hits a big fall away slam, but Del Rey survives that and is able to make the tag, and then you get things evened up a little bit as Bam Bam Bigelow comes in there. They sort of protect Bigelow in this match, and I think it's because they're building him for the big Lawrence Taylor feud in the new year. So he actually comes out of the match looking quite strong. He goes toe to toe with Mabel, and as Mabel goes up top, he's actually caught up top, and you get a rocket launcher off the top, which I just love the visual of. big rocket launcher on Mabel. But then he goes for like a sunset flip, Bigelow does, and Mabel trying to struggle to like keep his base. It looks pretty bad, him like wobbling about like that, but eventually he just sits down on like dead weight on Bigelow. Luger, it almost drops out to Del Rey. He's like takes a super kick, and you can see Luger is dropping a bit in like the pecking order, but the heels start to take control. You've got a bit of back and forth between Luger and Tatanka, who are feuded. Bomb is like put away by Bigelow. Him and Bundy sort of do the business. Yeah, the Guns double team Tatanka. They do like a double side Russian leg sweep. They do like the sidewinder, but Tatanka just keeps surviving. He just keeps kicking out. He won't be put away. Lex gets involved. Like Tatanka eliminates Bart with Samoan drop, I should say. Looks pretty good. 3-on-2 at this point. So it's just Billy with his porn star moustache and Lex Luger left. And eventually Billy gets eliminated. So it's like 3-on-1. DiBiase does his maniacal laugh at ringside as the heels just like double team on Lex, and in the end, like, Luger actually pins Tatanka out of nowhere. He just grabs a small package and beats Tatanka, so that's almost like a Moore victory, pinning his arch rival. But Lex basically has nothing left, and he's splashed by Bundy for the 1-2-3. So Bundy and Bigelow survive. But the heels aren't through yet. They're going to triple team Lex and work him over some more. And we get the save from the rest of his team, the other baby faces who end up saving Luger, who's been laid out. And things go from there. You can tell then the big Lex push is over and that they're running out of steam. Probably not as big on him as they were a year ago. I think that really shows in this match. As I said, overall, not an amazing match, but better than I expected. So I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. And so to the main event, and a rematch from the Royal Rumble in January, once again proving that they do have long-term planning, long-term feuds at this point. So it's another casket match, The Undertaker's specialty. The Undertaker, with Paul Bearer having returned at SummerSlam, he faces up against monster heel Yokozuna along with Jim Cornette and Mr. Fuji. It's main event time, and for this one the WWF have hired Chuck Norris, yes, movie star, martial arts expert Chuck Norris, as the guest enforcer at ringside. Now, this is for two reasons. One, because he's a big star at this time. This is during the prime era of Walker, Texas Ranger, which was a big hit TV show with Norris as the star. So WWF cashing in on that. And from that point of view, that it is good timing and it's a good get. It probably would have got them some great publicity. Nowadays, Norris isn't really a big name or a big factor anymore. That's partly why he was cast in The Expendables. That was part of the whole gag with that movie. But yeah, at this point, this was sort of peak Norris, where he was still quite a big name. As I said, Walker, Texas Ranger, pretty big show at the time. But obviously the kayfabe reason is then to stop a repeat from the Rumble, where you have basically 10 guys getting involved and helping Zuna to win the match and retain the title at the time. So that's what they're doing. They're saying we're bringing Chuck Norris in as a ringside enforcer to stop this from happening again. And he's in his hometown. He's from Texas, or at least that's what they claim. He comes out with a cowboy hat on, because of course he does, and he gets a decent reaction. But I've got to say, although, as I said, it was a good get for the WWF, he does pretty much nothing throughout to earn his money. He's just standing there watching the match, sort of looking imposing, but not really. He has a stare down with Bam Bam Bigelow and King Kong Bundy, who both come out at one point. When Jeff Jarrett tries to run in, he gives him a pretty weak looking super kick, karate kick. And that's about it. That's all Chuck does to earn his money. What an easy payday, I've got to say. I hope it was worth it for WWF's point of view. As far as the match goes, it was actually decent. It's much better than you would expect from a Yokozuna Taker match. The match is quite fast paced. It's actually kept quite short. There's some entertaining spots, some good back and forth. It made Yokozuna look a bit weak, I've got to say, as the heel, but it was selling like the threat of the Undertaker and the whole casket match gimmick, because from the start Taker like signals towards the casket and does like the throat sort of thing with the RIP style sign, and Yokozuna just freaks out and falls down. So it does make like him look a bit weak, but you can see what they were going for. Some decent back and forth as Yokozuna freaks out every time he goes near the casket. He blocks on the ropes at some point. Taker is pretty dominant. Like not much than Zuna does really affects him. He does the Michael Myers sit up a couple of times, but he does get some big blows in, like the sort of belly to belly suplex, the side slam, couple of like leg drops he gets in, and he has Taker in, but Taker keeps blocking it. I really love the spot actually when they both go in the casket, where Taker's in first, but then he drags Yokozuna in and they brawl back and forth in the casket. I think that's my favourite spot of the match. It's just a great visual, the two going back and forth in the casket. It really ups the sort of stakes. And Taker does his impressive rope walk, which gets like a good pop from the crowd. But eventually, you know it's coming, that you're going to get some interference to try and help Zuna. At one point, both managers gets involved. I don't know what the fuck Chuck Norris was doing when they were getting involved in the match. Surely that's part of his job. No, he's just there. He's just staring into space, counting his money probably. And Taker ends up like knocking both Cornette and Fuji on their asses. But eventually, as I said, the heels do come, like the actual wrestlers. So Bigelow and Bundy first of all, then Bigelow. And as I said, Norris stares them down at the edge of the ramp. You've got like officials in between them. It's a whole dramatic thing. But I actually like this. This was a nice little twist, because IRS appears out of nowhere. He comes in from the blind side into the ring and he attacks Taker. And this was a clever bit of storytelling, because earlier on in like the $1 Million Corporation match, they highlight Gorilla's like, well, why is IRS not in this match? He would normally be a part of DiBiase's like stable, and he's nowhere to be found. So like they're speculating then they've had a bit of heat, a bit of a falling out, and he hasn't been seen all day. So that's the sort of angle they're going for, and suddenly he appears out of nowhere. So they play it as that was a bit of a trick from DiBiase. Then IRS has been there all along, and they did it to surprise Taker. And he goes after him. He slaps on the $1 Million Dream and dumps Taker into the casket. Zuna is like slowly recovering at this point. He's very groggy and slow. He takes too long, and of course it's going to take more than just the $1 Million Dream to put Taker out for the count. So just at the last second, Taker puts his arm off, blocks it, and he comes back into the ring, chokeslam on Zuna, and he knocks him into the casket, and eventually slams the lid shut. Taker wins the casket match. As I said, Jarrett also tried to get involved, and that's when Chuck Norris has his big moment where he actually gets a karate kick to cut off that threat. So Taker, not surprisingly, Taker wins. I think that's why they put the match last, partly because of Chuck Norris and partly because I think they wanted a big babyface win to end the show. It would have been a bit of a downer if they ended with the submission match and the result there. So I think that's why they put this match last. So as I said, overall it was better than the Rumble match. The Rumble match obviously had that crazy angle at the end with the whole Taker going off to heaven thing. One of the most bizarre angles ever in wrestling history, but it's memorable because of that. But the match itself wasn't very good, and I'm not saying this match was amazing, but I preferred it because it moved a bit faster and they kept it short, and they seemed to be, the booking was just a bit more smarter. So overall, not a bad match, but not a, considering it's the main event of the card as well, it was a bit of an anti-climax. They sort of made Yokozuna look a little bit too weak at times. Taker with the predictable win. Solid enough match, but nothing really to write home about. They sent the fans home happy at least. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars. Probably better than you would expect. Card to really rate because there were some ups and downs. Overall, it was a better card than I remembered or expected. I would say there was 2 good matches, which were obviously the WWF title match and then the opening match I enjoyed. And then there was one terrible match, no prizes for guessing which one that was. And then you had some indifferent matches, I'd say decent but not amazing matches as well, is how I would sum up the other two. So it was touch and go, it was hit and miss, but overall, considering some of the matches on paper didn't look that impressive, I would say they probably were a bit better than I expected. So I think I'll give it about a 6 out of 10 overall as a pay-per-view. I'm going to be a little generous, but a very mixed night overall. That's Survivor Series 94. Let me know your thoughts on this pay-per-view. What were your favourite matches? What were some of the highlights, some of the lowlights? And overall, what did you think of it as a pay-per-view? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Share me out on social media too, and look out for more retro reviews throughout the month. I'm obviously doing WCW, the 92 year in review, and I'm going to be doing more live stream watches of classic old school Survivor Series cards, and probably will fit in a couple more reviews as well. So stay tuned for that. More Survivor Series action on the channel throughout. But thanks for listening, and goodbye.